welcome to a special episode of My Guide to Civilization 6 as we tackle the very first, or at least my very first, Age of Abundance. We have been tasked on normal difficulty settings with Pericles on a standard game speed to win a culture game where culture is literally the only win con available. All the other modes have been turned off. There's no need to worry about science or anything. This is more about how you manage your resources that have been given to you. We've already been given quite an interesting start with 2 cities, 1-7, 1-2, so we can build districts already. I've already started work on my first district, the commercial hub. And you get given, I think it's 1,000 gold to start with. Anyway, the point is, there's a lot of strange things that go on in this game, right? And the reason why is because you'd think normal is easy, right? At least I would, by comparison to deity. But because there is so many changes, and if you have a look, literally the GUI is so much like the original state of the game. It takes quite a bit of getting used to from all the improvements that I have become acclimatized to over the years with what modern Civ games look like. So I think the most important priority to start a game like this is to make sure that you make enough settlers to have a good empire rolling. We're going to be uncovering the south part of the map. We're going to hopefully be able to cover the map with settlers to give ourselves a footing into the game. But in order to show some of the more striking differences between a regular game of today and this, I want to particularly talk about and look at the civic tree. The civic tree isn't a shuffle, it's your standard there, so you're probably more used to that than I am, but that's fine. But the weird thing about this is you may notice there are no governor positions. We've been given all the tech and civics up to and including the medieval era, but there crucially a lot of wonders have been taken away. It almost feels like playing base game again. And no governors at all to speak of. This means no Magnus in the biggest city, Athens. This means, no Pingala to boost our science and culture. It means an awful lot of much more difficult things to deal with, much more slower game than what I would normally like to be able to establish. But anyway, looking forward to showing you how I got on. You join us now on turn 215. That's right. This game, specifically designed by the developers for all of us, pre-made, makes you start in turn 195, which also explains why we have all the text for the first 2 eras and such. So it's a very, very strange game, and it continues to get stranger as we go on. Let me show you something. So here we have our government. We have access to Theocracy and Merchant Republic to research, but since monarchy is already acquired, I went straight into it, because I felt more policy card slots, the better. But about those policy cards, I'm so used to so many things being how they normally are if you play a game today. But again, this is a game that's basically without any DLC, it seems, and things are as they used to be a long time ago, and there are some quite struggles with that. An example here is veterancy. I really love veterancy, especially on a map like this. You can see every single one of my cities is on the coast. One of the things that I do want to build to help the growth of the cities, as you can see here, as well as the production, are harbors. Shipyards are valuable buildings. They really help boost your empire cities. And I feel that this change to veterancy is quite a severe blow, because it says here, plus 30% production toward encampment districts and buildings for that district. Crucially, this version of veterancy omits the reason why I won't normally run it, which are harbors. So, like, I wasn't aware of that when I first put it in because I thought it would just function like the veteran CI I've come to used to. And yet, I'm common cropper as to what to put instead of it because it doesn't actually function for the reasons that I want it. There really isn't actually a suitable alternative, so I'm pretty sure I just left it at this point. Of course, we have the access to the gold, and we still have barely an economy and no faith coming in. And so I'm pretty sure I just put in engineer points and left it at that at this early stage. Having a look at the great people, I would really like to get access to Filippo Brunelleschi, because that is a huge amount of production towards Wonders, especially when everything costs more because it's a standard speed game and not an online speed game. Proceeding on now, and I explained how different this game is, especially for an online player like me, online speed player I should clarify. And the costs of everything and how expensive everything is kind of insane. I am used to 30 points for a great profit, not 240. And these other ones starting at 30, if not 60 at the very least. So, what does that tell me? It tells me that economy, in all forms, and the main two currencies as we know are faith and gold, is very important. And how am I going to do that? Well, one of my aims, because we have such a bountiful, rich, dynamic start with milk, cattle, and deer, and rice, and copper, and all sorts, is maybe Great Zimbabwe could finally be the truly great Zimbabwe that it always wanted to be. So I'm hoping to make use of that. In addition, you can see that we have finally been able to settle most of the cities that we have made on our home continent. I will want to explore elsewhere, and I do think, looking back, that maybe exploration was indeed my biggest weakness for not getting a quicker victory than they end up getting. I do end up also wanting to settle up here in the north. I do feel like getting access to the iron is nice. And speaking of strategic resources, I want to talk more. Another very strange thing, and I don't know whether it was done simply because it doesn't have the modern elements that a usual game to this day has. But these strategic resources don't accumulate like normal, and I say normal for a 2023 game. Instead, they are purely the total amount of sources that you have established, and not an amount of the resource from within. So instead of a max like 25 star and getting more of encampments and things like that, we have built either districts and or 2 pastures collectively, because we have 2 sources of horses and 1 source of niter. We will hopefully be able to get 1 more source of iron. This is also obviously important to factor in for 2 more reasons. One, I don't know if they think they're trying to clamp down on cheesy methods to generate economy, because, you know, if they had the current way things stand, maybe it would be easier if I actually had neighbors, which we don't have yet, to trade with, because you could constantly be flowing in more and more of these resources instead of just 1 fixed source and that's it. Or simply because it's just part and parcel of it being set in a rather non-DLC type world, and it's just a byproduct of that. It seems very, very interesting that that's the case. But hopefully we can get our gold and faith up to decent values, whereby that won't be a problem anyway. You rejoin us in turn 247, and we're getting into the swing of things. We have completed our great Zimbabwe. Woo! And honestly, I'm surprised it's not giving me better yields. I'll be honest. I'm kind of frustrated about that. I think it's just shortchanging me. But it's still, it's still working. It's just not working as much as I'd have liked. Maybe it wasn't a good strategy, but I just don't understand it. But speaking of wonders, they also provide appeal in tourism themselves. And we're about to start making our way to Mont Saint Michel. And of course, Mont Saint Michel is very important if you want to do a religious-based tourism, because they offer you to have apostles with martyr, and if you can get reliquaries to triple the relics that you get from having apostles die with the martyr ability, then you can hopefully, although we can't even see it right now, attain quite a lot of tourism through those relics. We have Saladin and he has met us, but we are, like I say, 247 turn. Let's look at the great people right now. We are leading. Everybody is around 3 or 4 points per turn, but we are well in good stead, right? This isn't going to go anytime soon, right? Turn, 131 out of 240 total points right now, halfway there, just over. There's no possible way this would go wrong, right? Except wrong. And the reason why is because in the next turn, all the profits available for this game will be taken. Which is insane. How do I ensure that I can make the 400 more gold needed to purchase it? Because yes, I'm hell-bent on getting a religion. And I'm willing to sacrifice what is required. And what is required is to sell Knossos. To be able, and bear in mind I always play vanilla, so I know there are mods out there, but I refuse to use them. The game didn't put them, the developers didn't put them, so why do I have any reason to expect that the game developers would want me to use them? If the game developers, who clearly know their existence, didn't then implement them in the game, that is telling me that the game developers would rather I didn't play with those modes. Otherwise, why are they so lazy as to not implement it in the game themselves? And that's how I feel about a lot of games, which is why I don't like playing with mods. Maybe you disagree, I don't know, but that's how I feel about it, so I don't use them. But anyway, I will purchase, and note your score for that, but you probably would normally get one, the profit. Because as you can see, every single profit is now gone. And why is that? Because this game decided to not tell you that there are only 2 religions allowed in this game, and one of them goes to Saladin. Why they didn't bother to tell you this? That's never existed in any other game ever, and you have no reason to know this nonsense? They don't explain it, they don't clarify it, they don't warn you, nothing. And it's not something that appears in any other... That's just absurdity, as far as I'm concerned. And I think I'm not the only one who feels quite aggrieved by it. But whether you choose to sacrifice what you need to be able to make those ends meet and get the religion is up to you. Also, let's look at this. Now, bear in mind, I was already talking about this, and we'll clarify it again. I like religion and culture games because I can push for both increasing my relics value and having spaces for religious art. So, the first things I always like to go for, which is why sometimes if I'm diverting into, say, religion or something else, it might look strange, is to get reliquaries and cathedrals. But watch what happens. So, let's go make that religion, shall we? Do the usual, use my favorite logo, name it Barrelism after Atelier, and get ourselves reliquaries and... What on earth? Oh my... Of course they would have to get Cathedral. Oh, this drove me to no end of anger. Like, how come that... The AI genuinely don't know that they only have culture game to go for. And apparently some of the player base didn't either. What? Why are they taking Cathedral? That's not a highly sought after thing 99% of the time. It's so aggravating. I was so upset. So. I think I chose to take Holy Order instead. But it's not great. Maybe it wasn't worth the 1800 gold after all, but I want my religion, damn it. I love doing this strategy. Some people think it's a, uninspired strategy or whatever. I think it's a very clever strategy and a very cool one to get apostles and have them give me relics, and that way have relics that do really well with reliquaries. That isn't affected by not getting cathedrals, but it certainly hurts that I wasn't able to get one for my religion. Anyway. Late game now, and you can see that we've established our empire, even across the seas with Mycenae and with roads, and we've developed a whole bunch of different things. But to be honest with you, I think the reason why my game is perhaps a lot slower than other people's is because I put my finger in too many pots. Other people that I've noticed seem to have done less things than I have. They haven't bothered to get a religion, they haven't bothered to necessarily get spies, and I have spies summoning and funds. Their economies are nowhere near as high. I don't even think their tourism was as high, but because it's a culture game and they were able to just kind of capitalize on an early pressure, instead of me requiring 250 tourists, they required like maybe half or even less than that, and therefore won a lot quicker than I did. I don't really know how to feel about that. I do feel sad that my game is a lot slower than theirs, but at the same time I achieved a lot more, I feel. I also did national parks, and we're about to get both computers and switch our government to democracy. Doing so will allow us to attain the final necessary push that we need to get our tourism over the line, get ourselves the final acceleration to actually eclipse this turtle value, and win the game. A couple of turns to fall 400 now, and you can see that we have finally amassed the critical value that we've needed. It's been a fun game overall. It's definitely been very different. I was not expecting a lot of things, and I don't know if my idea was to try and be as quick as possible, or whether just to try and make a game I enjoyed, and I definitely felt like I got out of it what I wanted. I feel like other strategies probably were better off than mine. Exploring more early is probably really important to get a quicker win. Also, I learned some things watching other people, like how open trade routes should be both ways at all times. Like, you want their open borders and you want to give open borders to everybody, which is interesting, and I'll be trying to implement that more. And I kind of missed the point that you're trying to find out what is the minimum requirement to win a culture game, rather than what you think is the most powerful way to win a culture game. Because I feel like in many cases this game is an example of less is more, and if you focus on only some things and not necessarily build wonders or spies or whatever it may be, then you probably be faster. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed it. Until next time, everybody, please consider liking the video, subscribing to the channel. I'd love to see you again. Have a good one.
The worth of a culture is not measured by its accomplishments, but in how those accomplishments last and how they are remembered. The beauty that you have inspired our people to create will ensure that our culture stands for all